Hey, and welcome to the Self-Publishing Podcast. This will be the second episode in the 2.0 launch. I'm going to stop announcing that now, and from now on, they'll just be the podcast. It does feel weird, though, because we got used to doing these the intros with the music and all
we've
that
had
stuff.
3 years of da-da-da-da-da-da, well, I don't think that's how it sounds.
We're not. That's Batman. You were doing the Batman music.
What's Batman?
We'll probably lose it a lot if like Dave will never hear that music again because he doesn't listen back to our shows. But we'll hear it with Audra's voice. I assume she'll have to keep the same music, right? She has to. That's the brand.
Yeah, I actually moved that into Dropbox recently so that she could have it.
But I feel a little less motivated. Dave feels a little less aggravated.
Is Dave ever motivated? Oh, aggravated. Okay, well, that's different.
So I'm very excited to move on to my something cool. Oh, should we announce the topic? Let's do that. We're trying to get into that habit. So we're going to talk about dealing with multiple, like complicated storylines and multiple character arcs. And this is something that I know that you guys were wrestling a lot with for the Closing Yesterday's Gone box, and Sean and I have been wrestling with it a lot for the Beam Season 3, and it's just something that any author can play with, the idea of multiple story arcs and multiple characters, and that's some of our fun favorites. So this is a creative show, everybody.
And we will not have a guest today.
We'll not have a guest today. So if you're new to the show, we have guests maybe half the time. So you just have to suffer through. It's kind of like where you'd you'd be watching Friends and you go, oh, this is a Joey episode. You can skip that one, right? Like we don't episodes that focus on Joey. We don't need those.
The Joey episodes were the best in the latter.
Yeah,
seasons.
They actually were. Look at me folding on that. So can I?
Any opinions on Joey episodes?
Any opinions? So we do the something cool thing that occurs, that we kick off the show with, and for those of you who are live, which is nobody apparently, we just recorded another episode, and we're recording this back to back. And so in between the two, I went out. I got a glass of lemonade, and the mail had come.
Oh, this is piping hot. Something cool then.
This is really, really piping hot. So the mail had come, and I was just like, "What is this package?" And in this package, and I assume that you'll get one, both of you. I don't know.
I am at the edge of my seat. I
got this from Podium Publishing. Which is, for those of you on the audio feed, it is a big heavy metal on a lanyard and everything, and it's for it's an Audi finalist medal, and so we actually had two in consideration. You guys had Yesterday's Gone, and Sean and I had the Beam.
Oh, that's pretty awesome.
They sent us that, and I guess I just thought because we didn't win the Martian one for I don't know what one what were you guys in, Paranormal for Yesterday's Gone?
Yeah, Paranormal. I'm not even sure.
Up again, we lost.
We lost
best book ever.
Yeah, right. Actually, okay, so
I'll be talking about that book tonight on another podcast.
Oh, that was a great book. I had bought that book. And, I buy a lot of books.
The Girl with All the Gifts is the name of the book.
The Girl with All the Gifts. I bought that book, but who knows when I would have actually got to it. I read a lot, like 3 to 4 books a week. But whatever, I buy even more than that. So I buy even more than that, and so I don't know when I actually would have read it.
Look how big Sean's reading balls are.
But Dave says, "Oh, I'm going to read this book," and I love the idea of reading the same thing at the same time as one of my friends. So I said, "Oh, I'll read it too." So
Dave does not like that with watching TV.
It's better than watching TV with his wife, though, because that's just terrible. So I was excited to read it at the same time, and we read it at the same time, and it was really good. I feel perfectly happy losing to an awesome book, and The Girl with All the Gifts was an awesome book. It totally deserved to win, and The Beam was up against The Martian, which won, and totally deserved to win that category also. So yay.
So there you go, and that was pretty cool to get so anyway, I guess where I was saying is I didn't think we'd get anything. Like I figured it'd be like, hey, we got an Audi nomination, and we can talk about that, and that's kind of neat, and we didn't win it, but I didn't expect to win, but great, and it's over. And a lot of our narrators went to New York for the presentation, and James and Greg from Podium, they went obviously, and but we didn't. It didn't fit. I would have liked to have gone. It just didn't fit. And so to actually receive the medal is really pretty cool. Like I did not expect that. So that's my something cool for the week.
That is something cool. Dave, do you have anything cool? I like that it's a trope.
Moving on. Moving
cool.
on.
All right.
Fallout 4 E3 announcement was absolutely awesome. I cannot wait to play this game. I am going to. Okay, I figured I might spend 100 hours playing the game, but I've now changed that to about 500 hours.
Wow.
So any productivity
no more
you
books.
expected,
So
no more
CI
books,
fans,
no more. It's just awesome. I cannot wait. Yeah. Okay. For real, I do not spend all my time playing video games. It is my release. I might play 20 minutes. Like when you guys are watching TV or spending time with your wives. My time I spend with
No, I'm gonna spend time with my wife for my release. Just thinking that.
No, but I'm up all night and everybody's asleep. So I'm gonna play a game, unwind, and then go to bed. So. But
Not a lot of people to have sex with then.
I could wake my wife up, but that's just rude.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So my something.
I'm
cool,
done. I'll spend time with you now. I'm done writing.
I'm totally exhausted.
My something cool is that Sterling and Stone started our first screenplay this week, which is really exciting.
This was cool.
Yeah, it was on our big list of things, our top 10 list of things that we were going to do in 2015.
I'm gonna check that goals list while you're talking and see how.
I just checked it last week. We're doing damn well.
All right.
I'm pretty pleased. But one of the things on that list was write a screenplay, and so I've been reading a lot of screenplays. I've read Sid Field's screenplay book. I took a screenwriting course on Lynda. I read Sid Field's screenplay workbook, which I didn't really like, and read 8 screenplays so far. And I thought, okay, that's enough, But now I'm watching movies differently too, because I've been reading screenplays, so I'm just paying more attention to the structure and the visual representation. And so I needed to pick something to adapt because I don't want to write an original screenplay. I mean, we have a lot of content. We have a whole library to pull from, and so I had a kind of a struggle thinking what should be the first thing to adapt. Crash was a very strong contender. I would love to adapt either 12 or Axis of Aaron. I think they would both make fantastic screenplays, but whatever. Like I'm just not skilled enough for that. I needed to pick something with a really
long as well.
What'd you say?
Those are both long stories.
Right, they're both long.
And just
right?
conceptually really hard. I mean, I know for Axis, for one, like we had trouble writing that and figuring out which end was up. I can just imagine trying to do a screenplay.
Well, it's very visual. Like it will make a fantastic screenplay, but I have to know what I'm doing. I have to be good. I have to get a few screenplays out as practice. So I needed something that was just really straightforward. And so I really studied our catalog. Crash was a really strong contender because it's short. And so I think that the adaptation on that would be fairly straightforward. But I went for what is just probably the most classically structured thing we have, which is My Stepbrother the Groom, a romantic comedy. Like it's just a straight romantic comedy. And it hits romantic comedy beats. And so I started adapting that. I'm trying to hit 4 pages a day and figure that'll take me a month to get it out. Although after a few days, I'm realizing that there's no way because my first draft on this is going to be like 300 pages, and then I'll have to cut out 180. But it doesn't matter. It's going to be terrible. I'll make it good later. But it started. Like we have to start to get good, right? So we started. Sterling and Stone has officially started screenplay production, which is cool.
Awesome. Dave, anything cool? Oh, you already said that.
I already said my
Yeah, that's right. I just get so used to you not doing it. All right. Yeah. So
I'm almost done with my last edit on Yesterday's Gone. I don't know if that's cool, but
that's very cool.
I think that's very cool.
It's so torturous.
Writing is terrible, people.
I spent 14 to 16 hours a day editing this.
But it's reading really, really well. We are exactly half done with the final polish before it goes to the editor now, and it's reading really well. I think that people who love this series are going to love how it ends and are going to feel really satisfied. So yeah, it's been hard work, and I think that's part of actually that's a great something to mention, Dave, because that's kind of what we're talking about today. It's been complicated. We've got a lot of characters there, complicated storylines, and I think we've done an admirable job.
So that's a good transition. So what we were going to talk about today was, like I said, the idea of complicated storylines. For those of you who haven't read our stuff, the two properties that I mentioned, and we're not just going to talk about our own stuff, although we will, I suppose, quite a bit because those are the ones that we're working with. But
well, it's our experience.
It's our experience. But Yesterday's Gone and The Beam both are episodic serials. And the nature of serial, like TV-style serials and our style of writing serials, is that they have a certain structure. You know, it's rising action to the end of an episode, and then you kind of resolve, and then you rise action in the next episode until you reach a cliffhanger at the end. And typically, and it's true in these properties, that you have multiple storylines going at the same time that are a lot more independent than they would be in a novel. And so it just makes the nature of this kind of twisted and tangled. And I know that with The Beam, we've had a lot of stuff where things are coming together and they overlap a little bit, but they also don't, and there's a lot of who knows what and who's in what position, and it's just very, very complicated. So we wanted to devote a craft show, because we do sort of like marketing, business, nuts and bolts, selling sorts of shows, and we do these craft or creative shows. So we wanted to do a craft show that focused more on this. And so I don't know where to begin with that, but do you want to talk anything about Yesterday's Gone without spoilers, or should we just avoid that nest of snakes?
I think we can talk in generalities, because again, I think it's that experience that gives weight to the conversation. Because we could talk about things like Breaking Bad, for example. I think does a really good job of sewing everything up so it's neat. A lot of shows on TV do. I mean, we're in a really good age of television, and it is more complicated, the narratives. In fact, I'm watching Sense8 right now, which is probably the most complicated narrative I've seen so far. Because,
in life?
In TV, like it's just.
More than Yesterday's Gone season 3. I can't believe that.
Yes, and it's just there's.
I'd love to compare. You should read Yesterday's Gone. You should read The Beam season 3, and I should read Yesterday's Gone season 3, because I'd like to know which one is. Well, Sean would know.
The Beam season 3 is more complicated than Yesterday's Gone season 3. Yes.
No.
Yes.
It can't be.
Dude, there's more characters. There's more because what makes
there's plans within plans within plans.
We had diverging paths of reality in Yesterday's Gone season.
You mean like when you go to Target and somebody pushes carts in front of you?
Yes, but what makes the Beam more complicated is that you don't know what everybody else knows, so there's a lot of scheming going on. But in addition to all of that, you also have technology that we're making up. Yes. You have technology that you're making up. You have real identities versus fake identities. We have I don't know how to do this without spoilers, but yeah, it's more complicated. And also one thing that makes it harder is that it takes place in the real world. So and there's also a 100-year timeline that we have to adhere to.
It also is going across multiple properties. I realized this recently too. So
that's true.
Not to get too in the weeds on this, but the Beam exists in a larger world. Like it's Beam world, and so there's several other books that exist in this world. One was written by us. It's called Plugged. It's sort of nonfiction. It's fiction written as nonfiction. It's sort of a Malcolm Gladwell style book in the world of the Beam.
And it kind of articulates the 100-year timeline.
Yeah, and there's stuff from that we needed to not contradict, and the author of that book is a character in this. And recently, and this was kind of a surprise, we co-authored The Future of Sex with Lexi Maxwell, which is a sci-fi sort of spicy title. And there's a lot of mythos in that that just recently really started rearing its head in this too. So it is complicated. Maybe we ought to step back from the granularity of that work though, and because I'm realizing some people are like, what the hell? Like this isn't.
Yeah, well,
Don't know what to do with this.
Yeah, the point is it's a lot to juggle. So you have complicated storylines, and for the reader you have to pay off on everything that you promised them, right? So for Yesterday's Gone, and actually Yesterday's Gone season 3 and the Beam season 3 have a lot of the same job to do, which is we're continuing these stories. For Yesterday's Gone there was a 4, 5, and 6. For the Beam, we kind of want that to go on, like we have no exit plan for it. Like it's a really big world where we want to keep writing it and see how big the world gets. But the first 3, we want to kind of close a lot of loops. We want to close a lot of boxes. So it would be like the end of Dexter season 4 was, it felt complete. Like that was what season 3 of Yesterday's Gone needed to do.
Should have been complete.
Right, it should have. Dexter actually would have been one of my favorite shows of all time if it had ended in season 4. That would have been an amazing end to that show. Instead, it diluted itself year after year. And we never wanted to do that with Yesterday's Gone. We wanted to tell a specific story over a specific time. And the end of the 3rd season was supposed to kind of, close this part of the story, and then we flip it upside down and tell this other part of the story. And with season 3 of The Beam, we've got all these open boxes that we've opened over 2 seasons, and we teased the reader a lot. And so for season 3, we had to answer a lot of questions. Basically close 10 boxes and open 3, close another 10 boxes and open 3. And so for the reader, you have to deliver what you promised. You have to make sure that every character has a satisfying, arc, and that every, no hurly birds. If you presented a problem, you have to eventually give a solution. And so there are some problems that we opened in season 1. This goes for Yesterday's Gone and The Beam, that we didn't really fully address in season 2. So when you get to season 3, you kind of have to. You owe it to your reader. You can't just keep stringing them along.
I'm realizing now. I'm wondering what the best way to approach this is with the granularity of our stuff. So, do you think we should take existing like TV that's out there and sort of pick this apart? How is it different from a novel? Like, let's say that. So, if somebody hasn't really written one of these stories yet, what are some techniques that you've used? And maybe Dave, since I know that you get tangled up in plot lines and mapping things out and stuff, to sort of keep everything straight when you have all these paths. Like, okay, so hold on, before you answer that, you guys wrote Yesterday's Gone season 1 in isolation, right?
Yes.
So like you wrote a few characters and Sean wrote a few characters. So that's different too, is that they don't intersect in a lot, and this was true in The Beam a little bit too, that they don't intersect until they need to intersect. And so you can have, it's kind of like writing several different books in parallel that are related to one another.
Well, back then it was easy because the canvas was empty.
Yeah, and then you write yourselves in boxes and corners. And
I like doing that though.
Becomes I like it if I'm doing it. I don't like it if somebody else is doing it. Okay, I'll give you a good example. Okay, Yesterday's Gone season 6. Okay, and this isn't really spoiling anything. We have a scenario where these people are prisoners, of course, because there's always some sort of
you got to jeopardy.
Dungeon. Yeah, so I wrote the first 2 episodes, I think, of Yesterday's Gone myself, and then I realized I cannot write this fast enough because we have a looming deadline, and we already had pre-sale up. Remember, never to do that again, by the way. So,
you can just set it where you can make it. Would be one way to do it.
Yeah.
We'd run that right to the 11th.
Yeah, no, I don't even think 3 months is enough. So I think that's the Amazon 3 months. Yeah. Whatever. Anyway, so I wrote beats out for Sean, and I said, okay, I need you to write this part because there were 2 separate stories going on that eventually come together. So I said, okay, you write this part of it. So I wrote the beats out. So I put people into trouble, and I said, okay, go ahead. So he writes like 7 characters that are like in this, like basically this box. 7 characters that are in there, but then as the story is going on his end while I'm editing it, there's only 4 characters that are doing anything at all. These 3 other characters have completely ceased to exist in Sean's mind, and I am absolutely losing my mind.
That Sean is so incompetent.
And then he's like writing like little bits of backstory for people that completely contradict things that happened before. And I'm like, no, stop it! Stop.
What backstory? First of all,
I don't remember what it was, but it was something specifically about a character that was recalling a memory, and I said, don't do that anymore, Sean.
What I like so much about your partnership versus Sean's and my partnership is it's just like it's like a marriage. Like I can imagine Sean doing something and me saying how terrible he did something. I could see my okay, now I got to work around this, and I got to figure this out. Whereas you just straight out yell at him.
I'm honest.
Yeah.
Well, no, okay. There's 2 things. First of all, you told me how many people to put in the container.
Yes, so, but but if I do that, you have to continue to include them in the story. You can't just forget about 3 of them as if they don't exist. And I'm like, what the hell?
But they don't. But they weren't important to the story.
They still have to be mentioned because you have no. You have situations where there's no way they would not be mentioned.
But no, that's not true. You can mention it with a sentence. And in your notes you said, okay, this is a director. A director wouldn't just forget that. Bullshit. Directors do that all the time. You have an establishing shot, and then you change the shot. And
But they are in
only show them what's necessary to any scene.
Yeah, but they are in a perilous situation where they would have been mentioned at least being in there with all the commotion that was going on, but they're just not there. They're not there. They cease to exist.
All right, well that's fair. But still, that's part of the difficulty of 2 people writing within the same copy, where one person is writing with beating and writing, and then giving beats for another person. Like that's hard to thread that all together.
Okay, but I will bring this around to something constructive or useful that you can do whether you're writing with somebody or on your own, and that is keeping a running chart of characters, a running chart of timelines. These are very important to keep because it's really easy to screw up. And one of the things that I've done this season. It used to be that I would skip, we do multiple POVs in our books, and I would write, person A, then person B, then person C, then go back through the cycle. But now I found if I'm in one character's headspace, it's easier to stay in. So I'll write all of, say, Mauricio chapters all at once. And then I'll write, all of the other person's chapters, and then thread them like they should be. I find that a little easier.
That's how you wrote 12, right?
For
the most part.
A little bit back and forth. There are times though that there are times where I'm out of things to say on this character right now, and I want to go to somebody else, and I will jump. But if I'm in a groove and things are flowing really well, I want to stay with that character. So.
Yeah, I would actually hop in on something. When we do these hangouts, we can chat behind the scenes, and I think Sean started to do this because he didn't want Dave to say anything that was a spoiler, but this is relevant. So. Sean was saying to Dave, when I did this, I said, did we contradict this? Like when he would give backstory. And actually, this is something that we do too, and I think it may be sort of a good first draft tip, if it's a tip, is the way that Realm and Sans works, which is me and Sean, I write the first drafts, and Sean does the architecture and the beats, and then I do the draft, and then he does polishing, and we sort of work together. Maybe there's a final polish. And so there were a bunch of times where we've got 3 seasons, and it's 3 thick seasons. Like it's not just like a simple arc. It's like I don't know what was said. I don't know what year something occurred in. And so I just blast through it, and then I do that, because I do that constantly. Like I did it several times this morning, where I'll say, make sure this is consistent.
Right. So it's a very natural way to. No, it's a very natural way to write.
But I just blast through it. I don't stop to figure it out.
What he's saying is leave notes to yourself. If you're using Scribner, this is a beautiful feature in Scribner, but other programs have it too.
But it's minor stuff. So it's things like I'm trying to think if there's an example that I can pull off the top of my head. It's like did somebody say this? So actually, there's one that was kind of a bigger deal, and I don't know how we're going to solve this, and I can give this without being a spoiler. So in our story, Natasha Ryan is famous, like she's a singer, and
Dave hates her.
Yes.
And he hates her, and Kai, who is another one of our characters, is a fan, and there's a scene in this episode where Kai she comes face to face with Natasha and she reacts like a fan. And what I had forgotten until I was halfway through the scene was that there was a scene where Kai sneaked in on Natasha, and Natasha didn't know she was there, and she observed her, and Kai maybe should have been geeking out there. But that was a published scene. That was in season 2. So to have her reacting like a fangirl, I didn't know if it was consistent. So I highlighted it, and I left a note. I would be leaving it for myself if I was writing alone, but I left it for Sean, where like, oh, I just remembered, like she had this. Do we want her to be having this reaction now, considering we can't change the past one? Is it inconsistent with what we know about Kai?
Well, I think the one that Dave is referring to, I could be wrong. Reading Dave's mind is hard, but I think
and dangerous and dark. Like you don't want to be in there.
No, it's a terrible place.
Enter at your own risk.
But I think what he's referring to is a line with our character Brent, where I'm talking about his days as a reporter or something.
No, it wasn't that. It was something else. I can't remember what it was. It was somebody else, though, where you completely contradicted what had happened in a book.
But I didn't highlight it.
But is it the sort of thing where you can't, like the tweaks, most of the, that was one that may require some reworking. But pretty much all the things where I say, is this consistent, could be made consistent pretty simply. And that's why I blast through it, is it isn't starting a trail where it can't be redeemed.
Right,
So
but that's the whole thing. It's like I mean, because we're writing character-based stuff, their history is part of their thought process. It's part of who they are. It's part of the present of any scene that they're in. And yeah, you may have to change some stuff, and that's why there's 2 of us, and you know, Dave's very intimate with these stories, so he's there to catch continuity. But the option is to not have. You're going to miss a lot of good stuff if you're always worried about saying the wrong thing. Like sometimes you're going to say the wrong thing, and it needs to be cleaned up and edit, and that's why there's 2 people working. But you know, to miss it seems like it's just that you don't want to write that way. Like you're gonna make mistakes sometimes, and that's okay. That's part of the process. It's ugly, but it's part of the process.
Speaking of mistakes and ugly, a mistake that I see a lot of writers do. Johnny, you want to guess where I'm going with this?
Well, I actually think that I've seen this a lot on book covers.
Yes, exactly.
And you know, I know because you and I, Dave, we're just like, it's like right here. You know, we're on the same wavelength.
We're soulmates.
And I do see a lot of terrible book covers, and I just despair because there's really no hope for anybody.
See, now usually I agree with you on there being no hope for anybody.
So you have more to say on this, because I was ready to go back to the topic.
No,
please, you have thoughts.
There is hope. There is a beacon of light in the hellish darkness that is doing your own book covers, and that is going to 99 Designs.
So not doing your own book covers.
Unless you're a pro.
I considered that, but there's a whole lot to lose when you do that. There's just way too much risk.
No, there isn't. Not with 99 Designs. 99 Designs has designers, like top-notch designers, that create like covers that just look beautiful. A cover that for a best-selling book, you know, you're gonna look just like the other books you're competing with on Amazon, or better. You don't want to look like the crappy ones, obviously. You want to look like one of the ones that are doing well, and that's where you need a professional designer to help you out there. And 99 Designs has teams of people waiting to help you do that. You go to them with an idea, and designers will compete to give you the best cover possible. And you know, you have a bunch of designs to choose from. You can even get your readers involved and have them help you pick the book cover. It's an awesome thing. We've used them several times and have never been in a situation where we lost anything. we never had a situation where, oh, these covers all suck, what do we do now? No, we had too many good ones to choose from.
And if that happens, you can drop the mic and say, out, and then you have nothing to lose and you don't even pay.
Exactly.
So start your custom design today at 99designs.com/SPP. Use that link. You'll get the free Power Pack upgrade valued at $99. Free,
Would be
which
like a
gets
hype
you
man behind you.
designer. You need a clock. You could be Flavor Flav. So you get more designer time and attention. Get more eyes on your design. Get more tests. Wah! So yes. So can I add? Is it too late to add something cool? Because I think it's pretty cool that today Dave is the one with the connection issues, and it's not me. It's not me. Dave's got the connection issues today. I upgraded. I held my breath, and I upgraded. I did some Hail Marys.
I didn't even
things.
realize I'm having any issues.
Sacrificed a chicken. Well, maybe it is me after all, but Sean isn't doing it. You're glitching just a tiny little bit. It's not bad.
Dave's end.
But I upgraded to Yosemite because it's on like snow. I fucking hate how Apple won't just tell you, like, is it 10 point? What is 10.7? Like, why does it need to be an animal? Can you just tell me what that is?
10.7 is Garfield.
So I upgraded from 10.7 because I hated Mondays, and I upgraded to 10.10, which is Yosemite, and so now things are working and it's great. So, but on this topic, I thought of a few things where you were talking about maps and continuity and stuff. So one thing I want to do before I actually give, like, you can have a continuity editor. So shout out to Archer Caldwell, who is our Beam historian. And without Archer's tireless efforts to make sure that our timelines don't tangle, we would be in trouble. But you can do that like casually, I would think. Like if you have an analytical friend who can kind of, well, you know, this doesn't make sense.
Because you're going to be too close to it anyway. You know, somebody who's coming from the outside and looking in is just going to have a different perspective than you are.
And this is
writers that have, like, you know, they've had fans that would like correct them, say, hey, you got this wrong, and then they say, okay, well, you want to help me?
Well, and then there's macro continuity, which is a lot of what Archer helps us with. There's also micro continuity. So what Dave was saying about characters disappearing, I don't know if this is the case, but there have been times. This is a very, very simple example. But if somebody was sitting, and the next time we hear from them, they're walking.
Oh, Sean does that all the time.
Right. So there's things like that. Like, wasn't this guy over here? Or they could be like, they were in the other room, and you never mention them coming back in. Like they went out to get something. Like you have to know where these people are. So there's that too. I noticed like dialogue continuity. Every once in a while, we'll have an exchange where it's one person A, person B, person A, person B. And did you ever listen to the Dead Milkmen? Like, did you ever hear that? They had this song called Bitchin' Camaro, where like it's all about trying to go down to the shore with the Bitchin' Camaro, and one guy's arguing for it and one guy's arguing against it, and like halfway through you realize that they're doing it wrong, and the guy who didn't want to go to the shore now wants to go to the shore. Like that sort of thing happens in dialogue too, where it's like, well, wait a minute, wasn't this person opposed? But one of the things that I think has been really, really cool, and we're going to have to do this with the Beam. We did it with a few of the Dream Engine books, is what we call reverse foreshadowing. And so you'll have, and I think that we all do this, but we've done it a little bit more, I think, in Realm and Sands because we do leap before we look. So in other words, we'll discover a neat twist that hasn't been foreshadowed at all. And we'll be like, okay, that would be cool.
We definitely did that in Yesterday's Gone this time.
Did you? Okay, yeah. And then you have to go back.
Yeah, we got to the end, and I think it was maybe we were a third of the way through the story where we really realized, okay, this is what it's about. And some of that stuff, it didn't exist in the first couple episodes of the season because we didn't know, and so that stuff had to be seeded. The thing I think specifically you're referring to is like it's kind of a big thing that it really serves as without the seeding it's Deus Ex Machina. You know, it's terrible. it's all of a sudden we're just telling the reader this very, very convenient thing that happens at the very end, but you can go back and fix that.
Well, and that's the magic of storytelling is it's Deus Ex Machina, like if it's close. You know, so like if your story is you know, I'm doing a visual here. So if it's this long, and you tell them the thing happens here, and you tell them the foreshadowing stuff right here, then it's Deus Ex Machina. But you can do the exact same thing if you just move it earlier in the story. That's what's kind of magical about it. So I was doing polish on The Nightmare Factory, which is the second book in the Dream Engine series, right before we started recording today. And there's a scene, I don't know if you're going to remember this, Sean, where a character, Cora, needs to get rid of this liaison who's like a cop, right? And so she tells him something that she knew about at the banquet.
Oh, yeah, I know exactly what
that she knew about something from his dream. Like she knows something that scares him.
But you just made it up in that scene while you were writing that scene.
Right. And so like and that's the way I write. I'm just like, okay, well, let's see what's going to happen here, and then like, okay, I need to find a way to get rid of this guy. So she tells him something that makes him
too, but Dave gets mad at me.
Makes him leave, right? Like he realizes because it's his fear. So she's telling him, casually, something she would have no way to know. She's telling him she's telling somebody else actually, and he overhears. And so the guy, because it's something he's afraid of, he runs out because he thinks it might actually be happening when it isn't. But none of that had been seeded. It's just because I needed a way out of that situation. So I wrote it into the scene. And Sean said, do you think maybe we should do this earlier? So I took the exact same thing, the exact same shit, and I moved it to like chapter 3, where there was another dream sequence. This was like more than halfway through the book. I took the exact same thing and I moved it earlier. And so magically, by the distance of time, she was told this thing now in chapter 3 instead of in chapter 16 or whatever. Now it makes sense. Like now it works. And that's sometimes all you have to do is move things around. No comments on that. But I think that reverse foreshadowing or whatever, the idea that you're gonna build the conclusions and then go back and sort of add the spice throughout the book, I think can be a great way to manage some of these more complicated things, because you don't have to get it right the first time. You can say, okay, here's what we learned about how these characters are gonna interact and intersect, and then you can go back and say, now that I know, when I'm revising the book, you can go ahead and add hints and this guy went this way, but
it's
he
almost
really
like
this way.
The best way to, I don't know if it's the best way. I think the best way is to really use a tool like Scribner for sure. I think managing a lot of moving parts in a Word doc is very difficult. Being able to, use buckets to store your research and have blueprints or timelines or anything else that you need, character histories, things like that, that really helps. And one thing that yesterday's gone, we don't have character histories or anything like that. CI tends to not
in my head
do that.
Well,
anymore.
we don't really either,
Right.
only because of Archer.
Right. So, no, we do, because we don't for the Beam, but we do for a lot of our projects.
In advance stuff, yeah.
Right. So it's easier to kind of double check that stuff. It is harder for CI because so much of it is
going forward. We will do full character sheets. So.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes it easier. But I think that using a tool like Scribner is definitely important. The more characters you have, the more complicated your storylines. It just keeps it easier to manage. But also just having the faith that you can get through the book and that's not the end. You can make mistakes. Again, it's easier for me personally because I have great partners. I know that I have Dave and I have Johnny, and they're going to, I have Dave to check my continuity. Johnny has me to check his continuity, and that really helps. If you're there by yourself, you just need to make sure that you can say whatever you need to say, but then make sure that that stuff is taken care of. And I think it is nice if you have somebody who can read that for you, but not everybody does. So you may have to do that heavy lifting yourself, but it doesn't have to be done in the draft is the point. It is part of the process. Getting all those questions answered, making sure all the right characters are in the right places, all of that stuff, it's part of the process. I think what makes it difficult for Dave, for example, for Yesterday's Gone, is that we have this deadline. Like we're not movable. We can't really take the time we need, ideally, to have it not be stressful, because we have to get it to our editor and it has to go up for the pre-order. But that is part of the process. And so I think if you want to just know that you're relaxing into it and you're not you're going to have to get through 3 drafts or more, and that each one is going to take its time. And you make notes to yourselves each time going through. Make sure this doesn't, conflict with any of that, and draw it out. Take the time. Use a tool like is it Scapple? Is that what it's called?
Yeah. The brainstorming tool also made by Literature Latte.
Yeah, there are people who make Scribner, and they have a great brainstorming tool, and you can do that to kind of put elements out in place and make sure that you're not contradicting anything.
And one thing I want to say, for people that are doing, like a season of something with multiple episodes, because I know a lot more people are doing that these days. Try to keep the episodes as self-contained as possible. I mean, it's impossible to do like completely, but what I'm saying here specifically is if you have a character event where there is a payoff, there's a character arc, a smaller character arc within the bigger story of larger arcs. Try to keep that within the same episode, because we had, when we were doing Yesterday's Gone, there's a scene where, I set something up early and I have it pay off at the end of the episode, but the way we were writing the episodes, they kind of got split up between episodes, so I had to move them around, and it's just all first draft stuff, so it's really not a problem, but it is something you want to think about while you're writing and creating this story. If you have something that needs to pay off, keep it within the same episode. Set things up so there's a payoff. Like, for instance, if a character gets killed but we haven't seen this character in 3 episodes, that people aren't going to feel it. But you also got to be subtle about it, because if you suddenly have this character, and I see this in a lot of TV shows, because someone's going to die the minute they have a tender, heartwarming scene. So there's a balance to strike there. But you want to remind the person of the stakes, especially if you haven't seen this character for a while. Remind the person with maybe internal dialogue, or don't be, don't have characters say, well, the time that John shot your father. Like, talk about things that, like, they already know. It's a shared history. So kind of internalize it and make it subtle. But deliver the payoff is as close as you can. Set up the payoff and then deliver it as close as you can, so people actually remember it and they feel it.
Yeah, one of the things that I probably should formalize this, but it does seem to work. So it's harried, and I hate it a little bit, but like I said, it's what works. Is just the idea of keeping track of when you've touched base with a character last, which is sort of what Dave said, and where they are, what they know, and kind of like storylines that you need to pay attention to. So in the beam, if I'm there's a Noah West storyline that's happening in backstory, and there's the Shift storyline, which has been going on for 3 seasons, which is sort of our political, like an election. And so these are things that, like, we don't want to lose track of. Or, something is going on with Micah Ryan over here, and we know that that's important, but then we have, Leo and Lee and Dominic storylines to hit. I usually just keep a few notes for myself below my running text, like, circle back, like we gotta hit that Micah storyline, and then every time I get to so Sean does most of the beating, which is our rough outlining, but when I'm sort of reorganizing myself, I'll go through the chapters in the binder over in Scribner, and I'll be like, well, I haven't heard from Dominic in a while, and I just try to keep a loose section of notes of, like, these are things that we need to check back in. And then sort of related to that is the idea of callbacks, which the reason I say it's related is I don't know how you guys work. I get the feeling that Dave is much more structured, but for me it's a free-form thing going forward, and so I use that as a grab bag. So if we know that we need to check back in, we need to explain something, for instance. So there's this thing that is going to occur, and we don't know how we're going to explain it. I tend to look back through my grab bag of things that we need to check back in, and surprisingly often we can use something that needs checking in anyway as a way to explain or further a plot line that needs furthering anyway, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's like transitions or cuts in film. You want to transition from one scene to a next. Sometimes you can use a line of dialogue, in the very next scene, the kind
But
of
it's even more. It's even more than that. It's even bigger meta. So if something is without again going into the weeds too much in the beam, and people wouldn't know it, and I don't want to do spoilers. There's a character that's Serenity Blue, who's sort of metaphysical and out there. Like if there's something that's going on the beam, which is our hyper internet, and it needs some sort of a tech explanation, I'm just making this up. Like there might be something to do with Serenity Blue or her history, and I haven't touched in with her in a while, and we can use her to explain it. That's possible. We've also done some callbacks. So there's just to keep this general, like there's something that needs doing, and you need like a scientist. Well, we had a scientist that we used in episode 1 who we just never heard from again. And it's fine because he was a disposable guy. Like, we didn't need to hear from him again. But if we need a scientist anyway, why not use the same guy so that we're, like, paying homage to the world? And, like, we didn't forget about that guy. He's still around.
And it feels real.
Right.
Immersion is everything. And that's kind of how I am with video games. Like the open world games that I like a lot have, characters that feel real. Like when you're out of the game, you feel like their life goes on. And that's the same with stories.
Yeah.
Stories I read that really make an impact are stories that make me wonder what happened after, what happened before. And that really inspires me to want to write more when I read stories like that.
Yeah, there wasn't even this scientist scene that Johnny's talking about came up. Was it yesterday?
Yeah, it was yesterday.
It was literally yesterday, and we realized we needed a scientist in the scene, and there wasn't even a discussion of who that scientist should be. It was automatically, oh well, we haven't talked to him in a while. It should be him, and it does. Dave's right. It makes the story feel more real. It makes the people feel like they actually inhabit this space, and you're not just pulling stuff out. The last piece of advice that I would give. For here is the put a bomb, set a bomb off.
Yeah, this was relevant.
Because I think that it's very easy to let your story get out of control. So this is a Stephen King thing. When he was writing The Stand, which is arguably his best work, right? He would say that.
I think it's his best work.
No, I don't.
You don't? What do you think is his best?
The Talisman.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe Insomnia even.
He had Insomnia is the one that he plotted, but he hates it because it's it's so funny.
I've seen him quoted as saying that. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. So in The Stand, he has it's everything we're talking about. There's a ton of characters. There's a ton of threads. He's moving, half the story to Colorado. He's moving half the story to Vegas, and there's all these intersections. And he gets to this point where he had writer's block. And Stephen King is not a dude who gets writer's block, right? But he realized I don't know what to do next. And
he said in On Writing, he said he felt like he was losing his story because there were just way too many. It was like a frazzled, He
was losing the story there.
Yeah, and so he literally set off a bomb.
And that is when I stopped reading the story at that exact moment. I said, I do not want to finish the story any longer because it felt cheap.
You never finished The Stand?
I never finished it. It felt cheap to me.
The bomb?
Yeah.
Okay, well, 2/3 of the people on this podcast think that was a good move.
Well,
basically, if you haven't read The Stand,
I'll go back and reread it someday. I read the version that. Not the edited version, but I read that giant, big-ass one that he released.
That's the one I read,
That's
too.
the one I read.
Yeah, so
it
felt a bit much.
It was like an epic quest, and it just kept going, and all these people were just diverging. And I mean, he did have people going to Colorado and people going to Vegas, but it was still like keeping track of this guy and this guy and this guy, and they're all, quote, real people at this point, so you're trying to keep track of, well, what's this guy up to? So what he did... And again, if you don't want The Stand spoiled, then you better look away for a little bit. But what he did was he had these people that were together in Nick Andros's apartment, and one of the other characters had planted a bomb, which killed most of them. And it's the slashing of the Gordian knot. It's just like, okay, this is too complicated. Fuck it, cut it off. And what that did was it narrowed his cast down, and it narrowed the focus of the story. And thematically, the way that he explains it in On Writing is he said they were starting to build the same old machines, because The Stand is supposed to be about like a resetting of humanity, and everybody was just like picking, let's put the power back on. How long before we have our iPads charged up again? And he felt like that was just, the story was just going to march forward until we had modern day again. And so this was the way, it was like, in his words, it was sort of like God's way of saying, no, you're not paying attention to the right shit. And maybe that's why Dad didn't like it, because it was God speaking through Stephen King.
Well, my issue was, if I had soldiered through it, maybe I would have ended up liking it. I don't know, but it just felt like the author, his hand felt very present there, and I don't like that in my stories.
Well, it was.
Yeah, I don't like thinking that he couldn't figure out a better way out of this, that he just killed a bunch of people.
Well, it probably would have
required. It felt cheap. It felt cheap.
Yeah, it would have required too much backtracking, and Stephen King doesn't backtrack. He goes forward, which I understand. So
maybe someday he'll go back and edit it.
But the
because that's what he's known for these days. Is, everybody, you have to edit his stuff.
We started we started season 3 of The Beam with, like, that was in our very first story meeting for the season. Okay, we need to put a bomb in the closet. Like, that was.
Yeah, this was actually in advance. It was not like we didn't get to a point and get stuck. We said in advance.
Oh crap! Let's kill everyone.
Yeah, no, there was none of that. We actually engineered the season to.
I can finish Yesterday's Gone right now by just putting a bomb in and not have to edit the last episode.
Well, now you don't just kill everybody off and say story over.
Oh,
you
crap.
kill everybody off to purify your storyline. And it's not just killing people off, by the way. I don't mean to imply that this is about killing people off. It's about consolidating storylines. It's about slashing.
And you should not apply this to real life, by the way.
Like,
if your life is too complicated, don't plan a bomb.
Just slash it. No, but like, if you had, here's an example. So this is a very, very micro, and it's not really what I'm talking about, but it's I guess a decent example. In the beginning of The Lord of the Rings, like, Sam and Frodo leave the Shire, right? Like, so Tolkien could have gone, and Jesus, it's Tolkien. Like, he obviously could have gone into all the nuances of, like, what goes on in the Shire and who's where and who's baking bread and whatever shit. But instead, they left the Shire. So now we kind of don't need to worry about the Shire. Like, that's similar. That's the same sort of thing. Like, they left the city.
Tammy Lebrec has a comment on the video. She says Scapula is awesome sauce. Also, Ion Timeline for continuity. I haven't tried that, but.
I have that. I keep saying I'm going to try it. I bought it for the Dream Engine beats, and then I never used it.
Okay.
So do we want to draw this episode to a close?
Well, yeah, we want to stay under an hour, right?
We're just trying to stay more focused. So
we've done a neat job. I'm proud of us.
Neat job, and you might even say you're a neat guy.
I am a neat guy.
Neat
Dave
guy.
Doesn't get the reference.
No, I
know. I get it.
All right.
It's a good moment.
All right, everybody. So thanks for joining the
See you at
Self-Publishing
Panera
podcast. We'll see you at Panera.